Be confident, speak without fear. Written and published by Rising Audiobook. Introduction. What if the biggest thing standing between you and the life you want is not a lack of talent, not a lack of intelligence, and not a lack of opportunity, but the moments when you choose silence? Every day, people with brilliant ideas stay quiet. They shrink in meetings, hold back in conversations, and watch opportunities pass by because fear convinces them their voice is not enough. And the hidden cost is greater than most realize. Silence can steal confidence, weaken relationships, limit influence, and keep success just out of reach. The truth is, confidence is not a gift reserved for a lucky few. It is not something you are simply born with while others are left behind. Confidence is built, strengthened, trained, and the ability to speak without fear is not about becoming perfect, louder, or more impressive. It is about becoming grounded enough to trust your own voice. That is what this audiobook is here to uncover. You are about to discover why fear has held so much power, how self-doubt takes root, and what it truly takes to rise above it. You will learn how to move from hesitation to certainty, from quiet struggle to clear expression, and from fear of judgment to unshakable confidence. The journey starts now. Chapter 1. Understanding the roots of fear and self-doubt. Think back to a moment when you wanted to say something but didn't. Perhaps you were sitting in a classroom with an answer you knew was correct. Your hands started to rise, but then a thought appeared. What if I'm wrong? What if everyone laughs? Maybe it happened in a meeting, during a conversation, or in front of a group of strangers. The words were there. The opportunity was there. Yet something inside you pulled the emergency brake. Most people assume that moments like these happen because they lack confidence. But confidence is rarely the real problem. The real issue lies much deeper. Hidden beneath silence, hesitation, and self-doubt is an ancient fear that has followed human beings for thousands of years, the fear of rejection. No one is born doubting themselves. A young child doesn't worry about looking foolish when learning to walk. They fall, stand up and try again. They don't apologize for taking up space. They don't question whether their voice deserves to be heard. Confidence, in its purest form, is our natural state. So what changes? Life begins to teach us lessons, some intentional, many accidental. A child shares an idea and is laughed at. A student gives the wrong answer and hears classmates giggle. A teenager is criticized for speaking too much, speaking too loudly, or speaking differently. Small moments that seem insignificant at the time can leave lasting emotional fingerprints. The mind is constantly collecting evidence about how safe it is to express ourselves. Every experience becomes a message. Some messages empower us. Others quietly convince us that being visible is dangerous. Over time, those experiences begin to form beliefs. Maybe you start believing that other people's opinions matter more than your own. Maybe you conclude that mistakes are unacceptable. Maybe you decide that staying quiet is safer than risking embarrassment. These conclusions often happen unconsciously. You don't sit down and choose them. They develop slowly, like invisible walls being built brick by brick. Years later, those walls remain standing. This is where self-doubt begins to take root. Many people think self-doubt means lacking ability. In reality, some of the most talented individuals in the world struggle with it. Self-doubt is not a reflection of what you can do. It is uncertainty about whether you are allowed to trust yourself. That uncertainty creates a constant inner conflict. One part of you wants to grow, contribute, and express itself. Another part wants to stay safe. When safety and growth collide, safety often wins. To understand why, we need to understand something important about the human brain. Your brain was not designed primarily to make you successful. It was designed to keep you alive. For our ancestors, survival depended on belonging to a group. Being rejected by the tribe could mean isolation, vulnerability, and even death. As a result, the human brain evolved to treat social threats very seriously. Today, being criticized during a presentation is obviously not life-threatening, Neither is making a mistake during a conversation, yet your brain often reacts as if the danger is real. That racing heartbeat before speaking, the tightness in your chest, the shaky voice, the sudden urge to avoid attention. These reactions are not signs of weakness. They are survival mechanisms operating in situations where they are no longer necessary. The challenge is that your brain cannot always distinguish between physical danger and social discomfort. As a result, fear begins influencing your life in subtle ways. You hesitate before sharing ideas. You avoid difficult conversations. You remain silent when you disagree. You second-guess decisions. You shrink your goals to avoid failure. Eventually, fear becomes so familiar that you stop noticing its presence. It starts making decisions on your behalf. And perhaps the most painful part is that fear often disguises itself as logic. You tell yourself you're waiting for the perfect moment. You convince yourself you're not ready yet. You believe you need more knowledge, more preparation, or more experience before speaking up. But beneath those explanations is often a deeper concern. What if I fail? What if people judge me? Fear rarely announces itself openly. It whispers. And when those whispers go unchallenged for years, they become the soundtrack of your life. The good news is that understanding fear changes everything. The moment you recognize that self-doubt is learned, not permanent, you begin to reclaim your power. The moment you realize that fear is a protective response rather than an accurate prediction, it starts losing its grip. You are not broken. You are not uniquely insecure. You are a human being whose mind learned certain patterns through experience, and what has been learned can also be unlearned. As you continue through this audiobook, remember this truth. The voice you have been searching for is not something you need to create. It is already within you. Hidden beneath years of fear, hesitation, and self-protection is the confident version of yourself that has been waiting patiently to emerge. This journey begins by understanding where fear came from, because once you understand its roots, you can finally begin to grow beyond them. Chapter 2. Breaking free from limiting beliefs. Imagine wearing a pair of glasses your entire life without realizing the lenses are distorted. Everything you see appears slightly altered, but because you've never looked through anything else, you assume the world simply looks that way. You adapt to it. You make decisions based on it. You build your life around it. Limiting beliefs work in much the same way. They are not facts. They are not permanent truths. Yet they shape how you see yourself, what you believe is possible, and how confidently you move through the world. Over time, they become so familiar that you stop questioning them. You begin treating them as reality. If fear is the prison that keeps people silent, limiting beliefs are often the bars. Most limiting beliefs begin innocently enough. They are usually formed during moments when we are young, vulnerable, or emotionally affected by an experience. Perhaps a teacher criticized your answer in front of the class. Maybe someone laughed when you spoke up. Maybe you grew up comparing yourself to people who seemed more talented, more attractive, or more confident than you. At the time, these were simply experiences. But the human mind has a remarkable tendency to create meaning from events. A single mistake becomes, I'm not good enough. One embarrassing moment becomes, I'm terrible at speaking. One rejection becomes, people don't value what I have to say. The event passes, but the belief remains. Years later, many adults continue living according to conclusions they formed as children. They enter conversations already convinced they have nothing valuable to contribute. They avoid opportunities because they assume failure is inevitable. They hesitate before expressing opinions because they fear being judged. What makes limiting beliefs so powerful is that they rarely announce themselves as beliefs. Instead, they sound like facts. I've never been confident. I'm just shy. I'm not a natural speaker. People like me don't stand out. I'm not leadership material. The more often these thoughts are repeated, the more believable they become. Eventually, they become part of a person's identity. And once a belief becomes part of your identity, your brain starts searching for evidence to support it. This is where limiting beliefs become dangerous. The mind naturally pays attention to information that confirms what it already believes. If you believe you are bad at speaking, you will notice every awkward pause, every mistake, every moment of nervousness. Meanwhile, you will overlook the times you communicated clearly or handled a conversation well. Your brain begins building a case against you. The result is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Consider a student who believes, "I'm terrible at public speaking." Because he believes this, he avoids presentations whenever possible. Since he avoids opportunities to practice, his speaking skills improve very slowly. When he finally has to give a presentation, he feels unprepared and nervous. The presentation goes poorly, and afterward he says, "See, I knew I was terrible at public speaking. But was the belief true, or did the belief create the outcome?" This pattern affects countless areas of life. A person who believes they are uninteresting may avoid conversations, causing them to appear distant. Someone who believes they will be rejected may struggle to form meaningful relationships because fear prevents them from opening up. Someone who believes they are incapable may stop trying before they've even given themselves a chance. The belief creates the behavior, and the behavior creates the result. Then the result strengthens the belief. The cycle continues. The good news is that beliefs are not permanent structures. They are mental stories, and stories can be rewritten. The first step is awareness. You cannot change a belief you have never questioned. Begin paying attention to the thoughts that appear whenever you feel fear, hesitation, or self-doubt. Listen carefully to the voice inside your mind. What does it repeatedly tell you about yourself? You may discover statements such as, "I'm not confident enough," "People will judge me," or "I always mess things up." Rather than automatically accepting these thoughts, pause and examine them. Ask yourself a simple question: is this a fact, or is it a belief? Facts are objective. Beliefs are interpretations. A fact might be, "I feel nervous when speaking in front of groups." A limiting belief might be, "Because I feel nervous, I will never become a confident speaker." The difference is enormous. Once you've identified a limiting belief, challenge its accuracy. Look for evidence that contradicts it. Search your memory for moments when you handled a conversation well, expressed yourself clearly, or demonstrated courage despite feeling afraid. Most people discover that their beliefs are far less accurate than they assumed. The next step is replacing the old belief with a more empowering one. This does not mean lying to yourself or repeating unrealistic affirmations. Genuine confidence grows from believable, constructive beliefs. Instead of saying, "I'm terrible at public speaking," try saying, "Public speaking is a skill I can improve through practice." Instead of, "I'm not confident," try, "I am learning to become more confident every day." Notice the difference. The first statements create limitations. The second statements create possibilities. One closes the door, the other opens it. As these new beliefs are reinforced through action, something remarkable begins to happen. You start behaving differently. You take opportunities you once avoided. You speak when you would have remained silent. You challenge yourself in ways that previously felt impossible. And with each small success, your new beliefs gain strength. Confidence does not emerge because you suddenly become a different person. It emerges because you stop believing the stories that convinced you that you couldn't. The most powerful realization of all is this: the voice that has been holding you back is not the voice of truth. It is the voice of old experiences, old fears, and old conclusions. You do not have to carry those conclusions forever. The moment you begin questioning them, you begin reclaiming your freedom. And every confident person you admire once stood exactly where you are now. Learning to replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones, one thought, one choice, and one courageous action at a time. Chapter 3. Building a strong foundation of self-confidence. Have you ever noticed how some people seem confident only when things are going well? They walk into a room with certainty when they are receiving praise. They feel strong when they are succeeding. They speak boldly when others agree with them. But the moment criticism appears, the moment they fail, make a mistake, or face rejection, that confidence begins to crumble. It disappears almost as quickly as it arrived. This is because what many people call confidence is often something else entirely. It is approval. It is validation. It is the temporary emotional boost that comes from being accepted, admired, or praised by others. Real confidence is different. Real confidence remains standing, even when applause fades. It survives mistakes, criticism, setbacks, and uncertainty. It does not depend on everyone liking you. It does not require perfection. It comes from something much deeper, a strong foundation within yourself. And like any strong foundation, it must be built carefully. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with confidence is that they confuse three important concepts: self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-worth. Although they are connected, they are not the same thing. Self-confidence is your belief in your ability to handle specific situations. You might feel confident speaking about a subject you know well, playing a sport you have practiced for years, or performing a task you have mastered through experience. Self-esteem is how you evaluate yourself overall. It reflects how you feel about who you are as a person. Self-worth goes even deeper. It is the belief that you have value simply because you exist. It is the understanding that your worth is not determined by success, failure, appearance, status, or the opinions of others. Many people spend years trying to build confidence while ignoring self-worth. They tell themselves, "Once I achieve more, I'll feel confident. Once people respect me, I'll believe in myself. Once I prove my value, I'll finally feel good enough." But this approach creates an exhausting cycle. Every achievement provides only temporary relief. Every compliment offers a brief emotional lift. Every success feels satisfying for a moment before the need for more validation returns. The problem is that when confidence depends entirely on external approval, your emotional stability becomes controlled by factors outside your influence. A compliment makes you feel worthy. A criticism makes you question yourself. Success makes you feel strong. Failure makes you feel inadequate. Your confidence rises and falls like a boat being tossed around by changing waves. This is not confidence. It is dependence. The strongest confidence comes from knowing who you are, regardless of what happens around you. Imagine building a house on unstable ground. No matter how beautiful the structure appears, cracks will eventually form. The foundation cannot support the weight above it. The same principle applies to confidence. If your confidence is built on appearance, status, achievements, or approval, it will always feel fragile because those things can change. People may criticize you, circumstances may shift. Success may not always come when you expect it, but when your confidence is built on self-worth, something remarkable happens. You stop seeing setbacks as proof that you are not enough. You start seeing them as experiences. You stop viewing mistakes as evidence of failure. You start viewing them as opportunities to learn. You stop measuring your value by how others respond to you. You begin measuring it by how faithfully you live according to your values. This shift changes everything. But self-worth alone is not enough. Confidence also requires trust, and trust is earned. Think about the people you trust most in life. Chances are, you trust them because their actions consistently match their words. They follow through. They keep promises. They show up when they say they will. The same principle applies to your relationship with yourself. Many people unknowingly weaken their confidence by repeatedly breaking promises to themselves. They promise to speak up, then remain silent. They promise to try, then avoid the opportunity. They promise to change, then postpone action once again. Over time, a subtle message begins forming within the mind. I cannot rely on myself. This message quietly damages confidence. Fortunately, the solution is simple, though not always easy. Start making smaller promises. Promises you can actually keep. Wake up when you said you would. Complete the task you committed to. Practice the skill you want to improve. Speak up once when fear tells you not to. Each time you follow through, you send a different message to yourself. I can trust my own word. This may seem insignificant, but confidence grows through evidence. Every small act of integrity becomes proof that you are capable. Every promise kept strengthens the relationship you have with yourself. Slowly, trust begins replacing doubt. Another essential ingredient of lasting confidence is self-respect. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is not believing you are better than others. It is recognizing that your needs, values, boundaries, and voice matter. People with low self-respect often tolerate treatment they know is wrong. They silence themselves to avoid conflict. They constantly seek approval at the expense of their authenticity. In contrast, people with self-respect understand something important. They know that preserving their dignity is more valuable than earning temporary approval. This allows them to speak honestly, establish healthy boundaries, and remain true to themselves even when doing so feels uncomfortable. Ironically, the more you respect yourself, the less you need validation from others. And the less validation you need, the more confident you become. True confidence is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not need to prove anything. It is the quiet certainty that comes from knowing your worth, trusting your actions, and respecting yourself enough to show up authentically in the world. As you continue this journey, remember that confidence is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in ordinary ones. It grows every time you keep a promise to yourself, every time you honor your values, every time you choose self-respect over approval. Brick by brick, choice by choice, you build a foundation strong enough to withstand criticism, failure, uncertainty, and fear. And once that foundation is strong, confidence is no longer something you chase. It becomes part of who you are. Chapter 4. Mastering your inner dialogue. There is a conversation happening inside your mind right now. It has been there for years. It speaks when you wake up in the morning. It comments on your decisions. It evaluates your performance. It follows you into meetings, social gatherings, presentations, and difficult conversations. Sometimes it encourages you. Sometimes it warns you. And sometimes, without you even realizing it, it becomes the loudest source of doubt in your life. Most people spend years trying to change their circumstances while completely ignoring the voice that interprets those circumstances. Yet the quality of your life is often shaped less by what happens to you and more by what you repeatedly tell yourself about what happens. Imagine two people preparing for the same important meeting. Both feel nervous. Both care about the outcome. Both have similar levels of experience. The first person thinks, "I'll probably embarrass myself. Everyone else is more knowledgeable than I am. If I say something wrong, they'll see that I don't belong here." The second person feels the same nervousness but tells themselves something different. "I may not be perfect, but I can contribute something valuable. I don't need to know everything to deserve a place in this conversation." The situation is identical. The internal dialogue is not. And because the dialogue is different, the emotional experience becomes different as well. One person enters the room carrying fear and self-doubt. The other enters carrying uncertainty, but also self-belief. This is the power of inner dialogue. The words you repeat inside your mind influence how you feel, how you behave, and ultimately what you believe is possible. Unfortunately, many people are living with an inner voice that has become unnecessarily harsh. It criticizes mistakes, it magnifies weaknesses, it dismisses accomplishments. It constantly points out flaws while overlooking strengths. This voice is often called the inner critic. The inner critic is not born from cruelty. In many ways, it develops as a misguided attempt to protect you. Somewhere along the way, your mind learned that being overly critical might prevent future mistakes, embarrassment, or rejection. So it became vigilant. It began scanning for problems. It started warning you about risks. It tried to shield you from disappointment. But over time, protection became limitation. Instead of helping you grow, it began convincing you to stay small. Before speaking, it whispers, "What if you sound foolish?" Before trying something new, it says, "You're probably going to fail." After a mistake, it declares, "See, this is why you shouldn't have tried." The problem is not that the inner critic exists. The problem is that most people never question what it says. They treat every negative thought as truth. But thoughts are not facts. A thought is simply a mental event. It appears, it captures your attention, then it passes. Yet when a thought is repeated often enough, it starts feeling real. If you tell yourself for years that you are not confident, eventually you stop questioning the statement. You accept it as part of your identity. You stop saying, I have a thought that I'm not confident. You start saying, I am not confident. That small shift changes everything. One becomes temporary, the other becomes permanent. Learning to master your inner dialogue begins with awareness. You cannot change a voice you never notice. Start paying attention to the language you use when things go wrong. Notice what happens after mistakes, awkward moments, or failures. Observe how you speak to yourself during stressful situations. Would you talk to a close friend the same way? If a friend stumbled during a presentation, would you tell them they were hopeless? If a friend made a mistake, would you call them a failure? Probably not. Yet many people speak to themselves with a level of harshness they would never direct toward another human being. Confidence cannot flourish in an environment of constant self-criticism. Just as a plant struggles to grow in poor soil, confidence struggles to grow in a mind filled with relentless negativity. This is why reframing becomes so important. Reframing does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It does not mean denying challenges or ignoring mistakes. Instead, it means choosing a more accurate and constructive perspective. For example, instead of saying, I completely failed, you might say, that didn't go as well as I hoped, but I learned something valuable. Instead of, I'm terrible at this, you could say, I'm still developing this skill. Instead of, everyone is judging me, you might remind yourself, most people are focused on their own concerns. Notice how these statements create possibility instead of limitation. One closes the door, the other leaves it open. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The supportive voice grows stronger, not because life becomes easier, but because you become kinder, wiser, and more balanced in the way you interpret your experiences. Chapter 5. Developing Courage Through Action. There is a moment that almost everyone experiences but rarely talks about. It is the moment right before action. The moment before raising your hand to ask a question. The moment before speaking up in a meeting. The moment before introducing yourself to someone new. The moment before stepping onto a stage, sharing an idea, or expressing an opinion that truly matters to you. In that brief space of time, fear and possibility stand side by side. One voice says, stay where it's safe. The other says, this is how you grow. The direction you choose in that moment shapes far more of your life than you may realize. Many people spend years believing that confidence comes first. They imagine that confident people somehow wake up feeling fearless, certain, and completely prepared. They believe that once confidence arrives, action will naturally follow. As a result, they wait. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel stronger. They wait for the nervousness to disappear. But what they often discover is that confidence rarely arrives before action. It arrives because of action. Think about any skill you possess today. Whether it is riding a bicycle, driving a car, speaking a language, or performing a task at work, there was a time when you felt uncertain doing it. You did not become confident first and then begin. You began while feeling uncomfortable, and confidence developed through experience. The same principle applies to speaking without fear. Confidence is not the starting point of the journey, it is the reward for taking the journey. This is where courage becomes so important. Courage is often misunderstood. Many people think courage means feeling no fear at all. In reality, courage means acting even when fear is present. It means hearing the voice of doubt and choosing not to let it make your decisions. Courage does not eliminate fear, it simply refuses to surrender to it. The relationship between courage and growth is inseparable. Every meaningful step forward in life requires some level of discomfort. Growth asks you to enter unfamiliar territory. It asks you to risk failure, rejection, and uncertainty. The comfort zone may feel safe, but it is also where progress slows down. Nothing expands there. Nothing transforms there. The life you want exists just beyond the boundaries of what currently feels comfortable. The challenge is that fear often exaggerates danger. Before speaking, your mind imagines embarrassment. Before trying something new, it imagines failure. Before taking a risk, it imagines rejection. Yet most of these imagined disasters never occur. And even when things do not go perfectly, they are rarely as devastating as fear predicted. The mind learns this lesson only through experience. No amount of thinking can replace the power of direct action. One of the most effective ways to overcome fear is through gradual exposure. Rather than forcing yourself into overwhelming situations, you build confidence one step at a time. Imagine someone who is terrified of speaking in meetings. For years they remain silent, even when they have valuable ideas. Every time they stay quiet, fear becomes stronger, because silence reinforces the belief that speaking is dangerous. One day, they decide to take a small step. During a meeting, they ask a single question. Their heart races, but they survive the experience. The following week, they share a brief opinion. A few weeks later, they contribute an idea. Months later, they volunteer to give a short presentation. Each action feels uncomfortable at first, but each action also teaches the brain an important lesson. Speaking is not as dangerous as it once seemed. This is how confidence grows, not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through repeated evidence. Every courageous action becomes proof that you are capable of more than you believed. Every small victory weakens fear's authority. Every experience expands what feels possible. What many people fail to appreciate is the power of small wins. We live in a culture that celebrates major achievements, but confidence is usually built through smaller moments. The first time you speak up, the first time you share your opinion, the first time you handle a difficult conversation. These moments may seem insignificant to others, but they are transformational for the person experiencing them. Small wins create momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief creates greater action. And greater action creates even more confidence. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes manageable. What once felt terrifying becomes familiar. What once required enormous courage becomes part of who you are. There will still be moments when fear appears. That is normal. Courageous people do not live without fear. They simply understand that fear does not deserve control over their future. They have learned that confidence is earned through action, not granted before it. As you move forward, remember this: you do not need to feel completely ready. You do not need perfect confidence. You do not need certainty about every outcome. You only need the willingness to take the next step. One conversation, one question, one opportunity, one act of courage. Because every confident person you admire once stood exactly where you are now. They felt nervous. They doubted themselves. They wondered whether they were capable. The difference is that they moved forward anyway. And with every step they took, confidence quietly followed behind them, growing stronger until it became part of who they were. Your confidence will grow the same way. Not tomorrow, not someday, but beginning with the courageous action you choose today. Chapter 6. Managing Anxiety and Staying Calm Under Pressure. A few minutes before stepping onto the stage, a woman stands behind a curtain gripping her notes. Her heart is beating faster than usual. Her mouth feels dry. Her palms are damp. The audience on the other side cannot see her, but inside it feels as though a storm has arrived without warning. Her first thought is familiar. Something is wrong with me. Perhaps you have felt something similar. Maybe it happened before an important presentation, a difficult conversation, a job interview, or even a simple moment where you needed to speak in front of others. Suddenly your body seemed to have a mind of its own. Your breathing changed. Your thoughts raced. Every sensation became impossible to ignore. In those moments, many people assume they are weak, unprepared, or incapable of handling pressure. But the truth is far more reassuring. Nothing is wrong with you. What you are experiencing is one of the oldest survival mechanisms in human history. Long before modern offices, classrooms, and conference rooms existed, human beings faced genuine physical threats. Survival depended on the ability to react quickly when danger appeared. To protect us, the brain developed a powerful alarm system known as the fight-or-flight response. When the brain detects a threat, it instantly prepares the body for action. The heart pumps faster to deliver oxygen to the muscles, breathing becomes quicker, adrenaline floods the system, attention narrows, energy increases. For our ancestors, this response could mean the difference between life and death. The challenge is that the brain does not always distinguish between physical danger and social discomfort. Standing in front of an audience is not physically dangerous, but to the nervous system, the possibility of embarrassment, criticism, or rejection can trigger a similar reaction. As a result, your body begins preparing for a battle that does not actually exist. Understanding this changes how you interpret anxiety. Instead of viewing nervousness as evidence that you cannot handle the situation, you begin recognizing it as evidence that your body is trying to protect you. This shift is important because fear often grows when we fear the fear itself. A racing heart becomes frightening, sweaty palms become alarming, nervous thoughts become proof that something terrible is about to happen. The anxiety then feeds upon itself. But when you understand what is happening, the experience loses much of its power. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of these feelings?" and you begin asking, "How do I work with them?" One of the most effective ways to calm the nervous system is through controlled breathing. Anxiety tends to make breathing shallow and rapid. Unfortunately, this sends signals back to the brain that reinforce the perception of danger. Slow, deliberate breathing interrupts that cycle. When you take a deep breath into your abdomen and exhale slowly, you communicate safety to your nervous system. Your heart rate begins to settle, muscle tension decreases, the mind becomes clearer. This is why many confident speakers and performers focus on their breathing before stepping into high-pressure situations. They understand that calmness is not achieved by forcing fear away. It is achieved by regulating the body's response to fear. Another powerful technique involves releasing physical tension. Many people carry anxiety in their shoulders, jaw, neck, or hands without realizing it. Before important situations, taking a moment to consciously relax these areas can create an immediate sense of relief. The body and mind constantly influence one another. A tense body encourages anxious thinking. A relaxed body encourages a calmer mental state. Yet managing anxiety is not only physical, it is also mental. One of the biggest mistakes people make is focusing all of their attention on themselves. They become obsessed with how they appear, how they sound, and how others might judge them. Their attention turns inward. Every small mistake feels enormous. Every moment of nervousness feels visible. Every perceived flaw becomes magnified. This self-focused attention fuels anxiety. The solution is surprisingly simple. Shift your focus from yourself to your purpose. Ask yourself why you are speaking in the first place. What message are you trying to share? How can you help, inform, inspire, or contribute? When your attention moves towards serving others, fear begins losing its grip. You stop seeing the moment as a test of your worth. You start seeing it as an opportunity to make a contribution. Purpose is often stronger than fear. Consider someone preparing for a presentation. As the presentation approaches, they begin imagining everything that could go wrong. They picture forgetting their words, making mistakes, or being judged by the audience. Predictably, anxiety grows. Now imagine a different approach. Before stepping onto the stage, they pause and take several slow breaths. They visualize themselves speaking calmly and confidently. They imagine connecting with the audience. They remind themselves that they are there to share useful information, not to achieve perfection. The situation has not changed. The audience has not changed. But their mental preparation has changed. As a result, their emotional experience changes as well. Visualization can be remarkably powerful because the brain responds strongly to mental rehearsal. When you repeatedly imagine yourself handling a situation successfully, you become more familiar with the experience. Familiarity reduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is one of anxiety's favorite sources of fuel. This does not mean pretending challenges do not exist. It means preparing your mind to respond constructively rather than catastrophically. The goal is not to eliminate every trace of nervousness. In fact, some nervousness can be beneficial. It creates energy, focus, and alertness. Many accomplished speakers, performers, and leaders still feel nervous before important moments. The difference is that they no longer interpret those feelings as danger. They understand that anxiety and capability can exist together. You can feel nervous and still speak effectively. You can feel afraid and still be courageous. You can feel uncertain and still perform well. This realization is incredibly freeing. Confidence is not the absence of physical symptoms. It is the ability to move forward despite them. As you continue your journey toward unshakable confidence, remember that anxiety is not your enemy. It is a messenger from an ancient survival system that is trying to keep you safe. The goal is not to fight it, suppress it, or eliminate it entirely. The goal is to understand it, because when you understand it, you stop being controlled by it. And when you stop being controlled by it, the situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. You breathe, you focus, you trust yourself, and little by little, pressure loses its power over you. Chapter 7. Finding and strengthening your authentic voice. Picture a musician stepping onto a stage with an extraordinary instrument in their hands. Instead of playing their own music, however, they spend the entire performance trying to imitate someone else. Every note is forced, every movement feels unnatural. No matter how skilled they are, something feels missing. The audience may hear the sound, but they do not feel the person behind it. Many people live this way when they communicate. They spend years trying to sound smarter, more impressive, more confident, or more acceptable. They carefully monitor their words, adjust their personalities, and hide parts of themselves in an attempt to gain approval. Over time, they become so focused on being what others expect that they lose touch with who they truly are. The result is exhausting. There is a unique kind of fatigue that comes from constantly performing a version of yourself that does not feel genuine. It requires endless energy to maintain. Every conversation becomes a balancing act. Every interaction feels like something that must be managed and controlled. Ironically, the harder people try to appear perfect, the more disconnected they often feel. This chapter is about something deeper than communication skills. It is about finding the voice that already exists within you. The voice that does not need to pretend, imitate, or perform. It is about authenticity. Authenticity is one of the most misunderstood qualities in confidence. Many people assume that confident communicators are those who never hesitate, never make mistakes, and always know exactly what to say. But if you think about the people who have influenced you most in life, chances are they were not perfect, they were real. Perhaps it was a teacher who spoke from the heart, a friend who expressed themselves honestly, a leader who admitted uncertainty when they did not have all the answers. What made them memorable was not perfection, it was authenticity. Human beings are remarkably good at sensing when someone is genuine. We may not always be able to explain it, but we can feel the difference. Authentic communication creates connection because it allows others to encounter a real person rather than a carefully constructed image. This is why authenticity is often more powerful than perfection. Perfection creates distance. Authenticity creates trust. The pursuit of perfection is one of the biggest obstacles to finding your authentic voice. When people believe they must always say the right thing, sound impressive, or avoid mistakes, they begin filtering every thought through fear. They become less concerned with expressing themselves and more concerned with managing perceptions. The conversation is no longer about connection. It becomes about performance. Unfortunately, no one can truly communicate with confidence while constantly performing. Confidence grows when you stop asking, "How can I make everyone approve of me?" and start asking, "How can I express myself honestly and effectively?" That shift changes everything. Finding your authentic voice often begins with rediscovering who you are beneath the layers of fear and expectation. Many of us learned early in life that certain parts of ourselves were more acceptable than others. Perhaps you were told to be quieter. Perhaps you learned to hide your opinions to avoid conflict. Perhaps you discovered that approval came more easily when you adapted yourself to fit the expectations of those around you. These adaptations may have helped you feel safe at the time, but eventually they can create a painful disconnect between who you are and who you believe you need to be. One of the most courageous things a person can do is begin closing that gap. This requires self-awareness. Pay attention to the moments when you feel most natural in conversation. Notice the situations where your words flow easily and your energy feels genuine. Observe how you communicate when you are with people who make you feel accepted. These moments often reveal important clues about your authentic communication style. Some people communicate through stories. Others communicate through thoughtful questions. Some are energetic and expressive. Others are calm and reflective. There is no single correct way to communicate confidently. Confidence is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more fully yourself. Of course, authenticity comes with a challenge, the fear of judgment. For many people, this fear is the final barrier standing between them and genuine self-expression. They worry that if they reveal their true thoughts, opinions, or personality, they may be criticized, rejected, or misunderstood. This fear is understandable. Being authentic means becoming visible, and visibility always carries some level of vulnerability. But there is an important truth that many people discover only after years of hiding. You cannot experience genuine acceptance while presenting a false version of yourself. If people only know the mask, they cannot truly know you. And if they cannot truly know you, they cannot truly connect with you. Real connection requires authenticity. Real influence requires authenticity. Real confidence requires authenticity. The goal is not to make everyone like you. That goal is impossible. No matter how talented, kind, or accomplished you become, some people will disagree with you, misunderstand you, or simply prefer someone else's style. Confidence emerges when you stop trying to control those outcomes. Instead, you focus on expressing yourself honestly while treating others with respect. Something remarkable happens when you do this. You become more relaxed. You stop monitoring every word. You stop carrying the impossible burden of perfection. You begin trusting yourself. And trust is something people notice. Authentic communicators tend to be influential, not because they are flawless, but because they are believable. Their words feel sincere. Their emotions feel genuine. Their presence feels grounded. People trust what feels real. As a result, authenticity becomes one of the strongest foundations of influence. Not influence built on manipulation or performance, but influence built on credibility and human connection. As you continue your journey toward unshakable confidence, remember that your voice does not need to sound like anyone else's. You do not need a different personality, a different background, or a different set of strengths. Your task is not to become a perfect communicator. Your task is to become an authentic one. The more you allow your true thoughts, values, experiences, and personality to emerge, the stronger your voice becomes. Because confidence is not found in pretending to be someone you are not. It is found in having the courage to be fully, unapologetically yourself. And when your voice finally reflects who you truly are, people do not simply hear your words, they hear you. Chapter 8. Speaking with confidence in any situation. Walk into any room filled with people, and you will notice something interesting. Before a single word is spoken, impressions are already being formed. A person enters with their shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor, and movements hesitant. Another enters calmly, stands upright, and appears comfortable in their own presence. Neither has spoken yet, but most people will instinctively perceive the second person as more confident. This happens because communication begins long before language. Every day, whether we realize it or not, we are constantly sending messages through our posture, facial expressions, gestures, tone of voice, and overall presence. Long before people evaluate our ideas, They often respond to the energy and signals we project. Many people believe confidence is something that exists entirely inside the mind. While mindset is certainly important, confidence also has a physical dimension. The body and mind are engaged in a continuous conversation. Your thoughts influence your posture, and your posture influences your thoughts. Think about how your body reacts when you feel embarrassed. Your shoulders tighten, your head lowers, your movements become smaller. Now think about how you stand when you feel proud, capable, and certain. Your posture naturally opens, your breathing deepens, your movements become more deliberate. The fascinating part is that this relationship works both ways. Just as emotions influence body language can influence emotions. This does not mean pretending to be someone you are not. It simply means recognizing that confidence is often communicated through physical signals before it is communicated through words. When you stand upright, make comfortable eye contact, and allow yourself to take up space naturally, you send two messages simultaneously. One message goes to the people around you. The other goes to your own mind. Both messages matter, yet body language alone is not enough. Eventually, every conversation reaches the moment where words must carry the message. And this is where many people begin to struggle. Fear often speeds everything up. People speak too quickly because they are nervous. They rush through sentences because they want the discomfort to end. They fill silence immediately because pauses feel dangerous. Ironically, these habits can make them appear less confident even when they possess valuable knowledge and insight. Confident communication is rarely rushed. It is clear, it is calm, it is intentional. One of the simplest ways to sound more confident is to slow down. Not dramatically, not artificially, just enough to allow your words to breathe. When you slow down, several things happen. Your thoughts become more organized. Your audience has more time to absorb what you are saying. Your voice gains greater authority and presence. Most importantly, you stop communicating from panic and start communicating from purpose. Silence, contrary to what many people believe, is not the enemy of confident communication. In fact, strategic pauses are often signs of confidence. People who trust themselves do not feel compelled to fill every second with words. They understand that a brief pause can communicate thoughtfulness rather than uncertainty. Imagine two candidates in a job interview. The first candidate becomes nervous when asked a difficult question. Wanting to appear knowledgeable, they begin speaking immediately. Their words come out quickly. Their thoughts become tangled. They ramble in different directions while trying to find the right answer. The second candidate encounters the same question. Instead of rushing, they pause for a moment. They maintain eye contact. They gather their thoughts before responding. Their answer is not necessarily more intelligent, but it feels more composed and deliberate. Most interviewers would perceive the second candidate as more confident. The difference is not knowledge, the difference is presence. Learning to communicate with confidence also requires understanding that different situations demand different approaches. Many people search for a single formula that will make them confident everywhere. But communication is not one size fits all. The confidence required during a presentation differs from the confidence required during a personal conversation. The confidence needed during a job interview differs from the confidence needed when addressing a disagreement with a loved one. True confidence is adaptable. It does not depend on memorized techniques. It depends on your ability to remain grounded while adjusting to the needs of the moment. In professional settings, confidence often involves clarity and conciseness. People appreciate communication that is direct, organized, and purposeful. In social situations, confidence may involve warmth, curiosity, and active listening. In leadership situations, confidence often requires decisiveness combined with humility. In emotionally sensitive conversations, confidence may mean staying calm while expressing honesty and compassion. The more flexible you become, the more natural confidence begins to feel. Perhaps one of the greatest fears people face is the fear of the unexpected. Many individuals feel confident when they know exactly what will happen. The problem arises when something unpredictable occurs, an unexpected question, a challenging comment, a disagreement, a mistake. Suddenly confidence seems to disappear. This happens because many people mistakenly believe confidence means always having the right answer. But genuine confidence is not built upon certainty, it is built upon trust. Specifically, trust in your ability to handle uncertainty. You do not need to know everything. You do not need to have perfect answers. You do not need complete control over every situation. You simply need confidence in your ability to respond. This mindset changes how you approach difficult conversations. When someone challenges your opinion, you no longer view it as a threat to your worth. When someone asks a question you cannot answer immediately, you no longer panic. When a conversation becomes uncomfortable, you no longer assume you are failing. Instead, you remain present. You listen carefully. You think before responding. You acknowledge uncertainty when necessary. Ironically, people often trust those who admit what they do not know more than those who pretend to know everything. Confidence is not about appearing invulnerable. It is about being comfortable with reality. This becomes especially important during difficult conversations. Whether discussing conflict, disappointment, boundaries, or disagreements, many people either become overly aggressive or excessively passive. One approach damages relationships, the other sacrifices authenticity. Confident communication lives between those extremes. It allows you to express your thoughts honestly without attacking others. It allows you to stand up for yourself without becoming defensive. It allows you to disagree respectfully while maintaining self-respect. This balance is not always easy, but it becomes easier as your confidence grows, because at its core, speaking with confidence is not about impressing people. It is about expressing yourself clearly, honestly, and effectively. It is about trusting that your voice deserves space in the conversation. It is about remaining calm enough to think clearly, even when circumstances are uncertain. Most importantly, it is about understanding that confidence is not reserved for stages, boardrooms, or special occasions. Confidence is practiced in everyday moments. In the question you finally ask, in the opinion you finally share, in the boundary you finally communicate, in the conversation you have been avoiding. Every one of these moments becomes an opportunity to strengthen your voice, and over time, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop viewing communication as a test you must pass. You stop treating every interaction as a judgment of your worth. Instead, you begin seeing communication for what it truly is, a bridge between yourself and others, a way to share ideas, a way to build understanding, a way to create connection. When that shift occurs, confidence no longer feels like a performance. It becomes a natural expression of self-trust. And once you learn to trust yourself, you can walk into almost any situation, not because you know exactly what will happen, but because you know you can handle whatever comes next. Chapter 9. Overcoming Setbacks, Criticism, and Rejection. Not all wounds are visible. Some of the deepest scars people carry come from a rejection letter, a harsh comment, a failed attempt, or a moment when they put themselves out there only to be met with disappointment. No physical injury occurs, yet something inside them quietly changes. They become more cautious, more guarded, less willing to take risks. Sometimes they stop trying altogether. Perhaps you know what this feels like. Maybe you spoke up and were ignored. Maybe you pursued an opportunity and were turned away. Maybe you gave your best effort and still fell short. In those moments, it is easy to believe that setbacks are signs that you are not good enough, not talented enough, or not capable enough. But one of the greatest misunderstandings about confidence is the belief that confident people rarely experience failure. The truth is exactly the opposite. Confident people experience setbacks just as often as everyone else. The difference is not in what happens to them. The difference is in how they interpret what happens. This chapter is about learning one of the most powerful skills you can develop, the ability to remain standing when life does not go as planned. Because no matter how confident you become, you will encounter criticism, you will experience rejection, you will face disappointment. These experiences are not signs that something has gone wrong. They are signs that you are participating in life. Growth has always required risk. The moment you decide to share your ideas, someone may disagree with them. The moment you pursue an opportunity, you create the possibility of rejection. The moment you step outside your comfort zone, you increase the chance of making mistakes. This is not failure. This is courage in motion. Yet many people unknowingly sabotage their confidence because they expect growth to be smooth and comfortable. When setbacks occur, they assume they have chosen the wrong path. Imagine learning to walk as a child while interpreting every fall as proof that walking was not meant for you. The idea sounds absurd, and yet many adults approach personal growth this way. One unsuccessful presentation becomes evidence that they are a poor speaker. One rejection becomes evidence that they are unworthy. One criticism becomes evidence that they lack ability. The setback itself is rarely the real problem. The meaning attached to the setback is. This is why learning to separate criticism from self-worth is so important. When someone criticizes your work, they are not criticizing your value as a human being. When someone rejects an idea, they are not rejecting your worth. When a presentation goes poorly, it does not diminish your dignity or your potential. Unfortunately, the human mind often struggles to make this distinction. A criticism of behavior becomes a criticism of identity. A mistake becomes a character flaw. A temporary failure becomes a permanent label. The result is unnecessary suffering. Imagine a speaker who receives negative feedback after delivering a presentation. The audience comments that certain points were unclear and that the presentation could have been more engaging. One response would be emotional collapse. The speaker might think, "I'm terrible at public speaking. I'll never be good at this." The feedback becomes a verdict on their identity. But there is another response. The speaker reviews the comments objectively. They identify specific areas for improvement. They practice clearer explanations. They work on audience engagement. The next presentation is noticeably stronger. The same feedback produced a completely different outcome. Why? Because one person viewed criticism as condemnation, the other viewed it as information. This distinction changes everything. Feedback, when approached with wisdom, becomes one of the most valuable tools for growth. It reveals blind spots. It highlights opportunities for improvement. It provides insight that we might not see on our own. Of course, not all criticism is useful. Some criticism is constructive. Some criticism is careless. Some comes from people who genuinely want to help. Others simply project their own frustrations and insecurities. Part of becoming confident is learning to evaluate criticism rather than automatically accepting it. Ask yourself, is this feedback accurate? Is it helpful? Can I learn something from it? If the answer is yes, use it. If the answer is no, let it go. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Rejection presents a similar challenge. Few experiences feel as personal as being told no. Whether it comes from a job application, a social situation, a business opportunity, or a personal relationship, rejection often triggers powerful emotions. At its worst, rejection can convince people to stop believing in themselves. But rejection is rarely as personal as it feels. People reject opportunities for countless reasons. Circumstances, timing, preferences, priorities, and factors beyond your control all influence outcomes. Yet the mind often simplifies the experience into one painful conclusion: I was not enough. That conclusion is almost always inaccurate. Sometimes a door closes not because you lack value, but because it was never the right door. Sometimes a rejection redirects you toward a better opportunity. Sometimes it teaches a lesson you could not have learned any other way. And sometimes it simply reminds you that persistence matters. The people we admire most are not those who avoided rejection. They are those who survived it. Every accomplished person has faced moments where they doubted themselves. Every successful speaker has delivered presentations that did not go well. Every respected leader has made mistakes. Every confident communicator has experienced criticism. What separates them from others is resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover. It is the decision to continue despite disappointment. It is the refusal to allow temporary outcomes to define permanent identity. Resilient people feel pain, but they do not build a home inside it. They allow themselves to be disappointed without becoming defeated. They learn without becoming bitter. They adapt without abandoning themselves. This mindset transforms setbacks from obstacles into teachers. Every challenge becomes a lesson. Every mistake becomes information. Every rejection becomes experience, and every experience becomes part of the foundation upon which confidence is built. Perhaps this is the hidden gift of adversity. Without setbacks, confidence would remain fragile. It would depend entirely on success. It would collapse the moment things became difficult. But when confidence survives criticism, rejection, and disappointment, it becomes stronger. As you continue your journey, remember that your worth is not determined by your worst day, your biggest mistake, or someone else's opinion of you. Your value remains intact even when you stumble. Your potential remains intact even when you fail, and your voice remains valuable even when not everyone agrees with it. The goal is not to avoid setbacks. The goal is to become the kind of person who keeps moving forward because of them, because true confidence is not proven when everything goes right. It is revealed when things go wrong, and you rise again anyway. Chapter 10. Creating Lasting Confidence for Life. Imagine meeting two versions of yourself 10 years from now. The first version spent years waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel more confident, waiting for fear to disappear before taking action. They occasionally experienced moments of confidence, but those moments came and went. Life happened around them more than through them. Opportunities appeared, but hesitation often stood in the way. The second version chose a different path. They were not fearless. They were not perfect. They still experienced uncertainty, setbacks, and difficult days. But they kept showing up. They kept learning. They kept speaking. They kept growing. Over time, confidence stopped being something they chased and became something they carried. The difference between these two futures is not talent. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is the accumulation of daily choices. As we reach the final chapter of this journey, it is important to understand a simple truth. Confidence is not a destination. It is a practice. Many people imagine confidence as a permanent state they will one day achieve. They believe there will come a moment when fear disappears forever, uncertainty vanishes completely, and self-doubt never returns. But life does not work that way. New challenges create new fears. New opportunities create new uncertainties. New responsibilities stretch us into unfamiliar territory. Even the most confident people continue encountering situations that test them. The goal, therefore, is not to eliminate fear forever. The goal is to build a form of confidence strong enough to survive change, challenge, and uncertainty. And that kind of confidence is built through habits. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are reinforcing beliefs about yourself. Your actions send messages to your mind. Some messages strengthen confidence, others weaken it. When you consistently avoid challenges, your mind receives evidence that challenges are dangerous. When you repeatedly break promises to yourself, your mind receives evidence that your commitments cannot be trusted. When you stay silent, despite having something valuable to say, your mind receives evidence that your voice does not matter. The opposite is also true. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you strengthen self-trust. Every time you speak despite feeling nervous, you strengthen courage. Every time you take action despite uncertainty, you strengthen confidence. The remarkable thing about confidence is that it grows through ordinary moments, not dramatic breakthroughs, not life-changing events. Ordinary moments repeated consistently, a difficult conversation you choose not to avoid, an opinion you choose to share, a promise you choose to keep, a challenge you choose to face. These small actions may seem insignificant on their own, but over months and years they create profound transformation. Confidence is rarely built in a single moment. It is built in thousands of moments. The environment you create around yourself also plays an important role. Human beings are deeply influenced by what surrounds them. The people you spend time with, the information you consume, and the conversations you engage in all affect how you see yourself. Some environments encourage growth, others encourage doubt. Some people challenge you to become stronger, others reinforce your fears. This does not mean surrounding yourself only with positivity or avoiding every difficult person. It means becoming intentional about what influences your thinking. Seek environments that encourage learning. Seek relationships that support honesty and growth. Seek conversations that expand your perspective rather than shrink it. Confidence flourishes in environments where growth is valued more than perfection. Of course, no matter how strong your habits or environment become, difficult seasons will still arrive. There will be moments when confidence feels distant. Moments when criticism hurts more than usual. Moments when setbacks shake your belief in yourself. Moments when old fears attempt to return. These periods are a natural part of life. The mistake many people make is assuming that temporary struggles mean they have lost all their progress. They interpret a difficult week as failure. They interpret self-doubt as weakness. They interpret fear as evidence that confidence has disappeared. But confidence is not measured by the absence of difficult emotions. It is measured by your response to them. A confident person can still experience fear. A confident person can still experience disappointment. A confident person can still have difficult days. What makes them different is that they continue moving forward. They do not allow temporary emotions to determine permanent decisions. When difficult periods arrive, return to the fundamentals. Focus on the next step rather than the entire journey. Return to the habits that support your growth. Trust the process rather than the emotion of the moment. Storms pass, growth continues, confidence endures. Perhaps the most important mindset you can develop is the mindset of a lifelong learner. People with fragile confidence often believe mistakes diminish their value. People with lasting confidence see mistakes as part of the learning process. They understand that growth never truly ends. There is always another skill to develop, another challenge to face, another lesson to learn. This mindset removes enormous pressure. You no longer need to prove yourself constantly. You no longer need to be perfect. You simply need to remain committed to learning. When life becomes a journey of growth, rather than a test of worthiness, confidence becomes far more sustainable. You stop measuring yourself against impossible standards. You start appreciating progress. You stop fearing mistakes. You start learning from them. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and begin asking, "What can this teach me?" This perspective creates resilience, and resilience is one of the strongest forms of confidence that exists. As this audiobook comes to a close, take a moment to reflect on how far you have come. You have explored the roots of fear and self-doubt. You have challenged limiting beliefs. You have strengthened your inner dialogue. You have learned the power of courage, authenticity, resilience, and purposeful communication. But the most important realization may be this: everything you have been searching for is already within you. The confidence you admire in others is not something they possess that you lack. It is something they developed through choices, actions, and persistence. And so can you. From this day forward, there will still be moments of uncertainty. There will still be situations that challenge you. There will still be reasons to stay silent. But there will also be a stronger voice within you. A voice that remembers everything you have learned. A voice that trusts itself. A voice that chooses courage over fear. A voice that understands its worth. A voice that knows it does not need to be perfect to be powerful. Protect that voice. Strengthen it every day. And wherever life takes you next, let it be heard. Because lasting confidence is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming fully, courageously, and unapologetically yourself. As we reach the end of this journey, remember one truth above all others: confidence is not the absence of fear. It never has been. Confidence is the willingness to move forward even when fear is present. It is the decision to speak when your voice trembles, to step forward when uncertainty whispers, and to trust yourself when the outcome is unknown. Every confident person you admire was once where you are now. They experienced self-doubt. They worried about being judged. They questioned their abilities and feared making mistakes. What separated them from others was not fearlessness, it was courage. They acted despite their fear, and with every action, confidence slowly grew. The transformation you seek does not happen overnight. It is built through small, consistent choices made every day. A question asked when you would normally stay silent. An opinion shared when you would usually hold back. A challenge accepted instead of avoided. These moments may seem small, but they are the building blocks of unshakable confidence. Never forget that your voice matters, your ideas matter, your experiences, perspective and presence have value. There are conversations that need your contribution, opportunities waiting for your courage, and people who may benefit from what only you can offer. So stop waiting to feel confident. Speak, act. Take the first step today. Confidence will not arrive before you begin.